what I want to show you briefly in ZBrush is how to sort of take an object with a silhouette and basically very quickly turn it into um, a usable mesh, or at least the beginnings of a prototype, and how quickly that can be. So I'm just going to launch ZBrush here. Yeah, as I was saying, so we've got sort of our thumbnails here, our designs here, and I'm going to show you a couple of quick steps to basically first turn this into a very basic mesh to start working on, and then how we could potentially apply texture to this down the road. So you can go from illustration to really like a realized mesh. So I'm just going to launch this in Photoshop. So I'm going to basically crop this drawing because I think it's the most in profile of all the shots. And I'm going to try to mask this thing relatively quickly. So we'll see if we can, this quick masking tool in Photoshop is really fantastic. So we can get a quick selection, and I'm going to hit Q. What Q does is allow you to go into kind of quick selection mode or quick paint mode. And I can flip this around. So I basically want to make sure there's some holes in here. So I'm going to just hit B for brush and make sure I'm painting with black. So that will give me the ability to kind of fill in the rest of the selection that might be missing, like so. So sometimes, if your selection is a little bit off, you can just touch it up by going into this quick paint mode, which is Q. So I'll hit Q again to jump back out. So I'm going to basically create a new layer. And what I want to do is flip the selection around, which is Control-Shift-I, and if I hit Control Backspace, or I'll X and hit Control Backspace, I'll fill this in black. Control-Shift-I to flip around and hit Control Backspace again, or I'll hit X, which flips my foreground and background color, and hit Control Backspace again to fill that with that color. So I've got basically a rough silhouette, which is sort of my goal in this case, and what I want to do with the silhouette is again, I'm going to hit X to switch back to a white brush. I'm just going to trim up the outline of this a little bit. Now, I don't necessarily need the arms right now. I can deal with those later on. And I'll say save this on my computer. Let's say X_silhouette. Okay. Now, what's great is that if we're over in ZBrush, I'm just going to drag out a cylinder and make polymesh. So, we can take a standard brush with a drag and load this as an alpha under alpha, then import. And I'll grab this. And so if I have enough divisions, I'll be able to drag this alpha out. And let me just turn off focal shift here. So right now the alpha is actually kind of inverted. ZBrush prefers a white foreground object and a black background. So you can do this one of two ways. You can go to Photoshop and invert that, and then just save over. Save over that. Or inside of ZBrush itself, you can take the alpha and literally click on the alpha menu and go to inverse. Okay, so that's one of two ways. So yes, we can drag this out. It gives us a silhouette, right? But I'm going to show you a little trick that I use, which is to basically go into alpha, and then I'll say to mesh, okay? To mesh will literally take the alpha and push it out based on the black and white height difference. So I'm going to kind of scale the depth of this a little bit deeper just to exaggerate it a bit. And I'm going to use something called the slice brush, slice curve brush. So it's going to warn me when you hold Control Shift, this will be the new selection brush when you hold Control Shift. I'll just say okay. So what I want out of this is to kind of basically create, it's going to slice to a mesh and create two different groups, two different polygroups. So you'll see there's sort of two different color codings. So what's great about this is I can Control Shift click on this backdrop once and then twice, and it hides it away. This is my custom interface, so I'll go to Delete Hidden, but you can also get to it under Geometry, Modify Topology. Delete Hidden. Same button, different location. Okay, so we delete Hidden. And next up, what I want to do is basically I want to mirror this to give it a thickness. So again, there's mirror and weld. We can try that here. In this case, it's going in the wrong direction. So I'll do it under my kind of custom tools here. Under mesh editing, mirror and weld, and you can switch off X, and I'm going to try Z and mirror and weld. Now it's not quite closing it up, so what I want to do is undo and just kind of nudge this over a little bit and then do mirror and weld. And there we've basically got the beginnings of your prop, let's say, right? Now what's great about this is that, I can start doing some sculpting. I can start smoothing it out. Let's see, where's our symmetry? So the other thing I recommend too, if you are working on a prop, you should kind of have it forward facing. So I'm going to rotate this and hold shift so it snaps to a nice front view. And that way when I hit symmetry, it'll be along the X axis. Okay, so we can kind of get that done nicely, neatly. So again, you can go from silhouette concept sculpt to something really, really close to your idea very, very quickly. And, I might replace some of these parts with, potentially with a cylinder or something like that, or just rework the shape quite a bit. I might use something like clip curve. Clip curve basically flattens the mesh against the curve that you draw. And if you watch what I do here, it's going to literally create kind of that almost like angle of the axe blade, let's say. Okay. So again, just go in, kind of clean this up, maybe do a dynamesh. I'll probably dynamesh this fairly low. Maybe not that low. There we go. Okay, so all right, we can get places very, very quickly with this. So you can keep sculpting this and evolving this. If you want to use reference, you can actually turn this into see-through mode. So you can literally see through the application itself to what's happening in Photoshop or your other image viewer. So I can sort of say, okay, I'm gonna kind of rework the shape or whatever, right? So we can tweak things that way through see-through. Another method you can use for sort of showing your reference or your views. Let me just hit this and hit Alt Control S. I'll say this is the color. Say that on high. So if you wanted to bring in a reference as well, when you turn on the floor, it basically gives you this sort of home grid like Maya. And if we go into draw, there's front to back. Right now there's no front to back grid, but if I click on map 1 and I'm going to click on import, what I will get is that color reference. Okay. Now I may want this in a side view, so I can go back to here and just say turn texture off and maybe go to left, right. And map 1, I'll go to import and bring this in again, right? Now, it's not working on that side, of course, so I'll turn this off and then turn on map 2 and import that again. For some reason it's not showing, but I'll just bring it back into map 1 here. And we do have adjustments, so just so you know, you can take these under the draw menu. We can flip the drawing, by the way. So if you go into draw again, you can flip it, you can scale it, you can offset. We also have a fill mode option. So if the fill mode's at 0, then we don't see the fill. If it's at 1, it's a sort of semi-transparent mode, less transparent, and then there's almost like full view. And when we're in a side view, we can literally kind of get almost this like X-ray view of the prop. So we can resync this to our silhouettes or our drawing, okay? So I just wanted to show you that as well for referencing in ZBrush. And as a final step, I'm going to pretend this thing is nice and clean and the mesh is good. But just for speed's sake, I'm going to divide this up to a very high resolution mesh, okay? And what we can do, which is rather fascinating, is we can take this object, especially if we're not in perspective, but we're in a flat view. I'm going to zoom into this quite closely. If I go to Document, ZApp link, what it does is it kind of like drops the 3D model out of the 3D space into a 2D space or 2.5D space, sends a document over to Photoshop. I'm going to tell it to do double-sided because I want a texture, let's say the front and back, and I'll say drop now. So it's dropping it into this 2D space, saving the document, and it brings it into Photoshop. Now you might be wondering, what am I going to do with this? Well, you can take this, for example. Let me just create a layer mask. sorry, I'm just going to put a layer mask on this and paste that in. Right. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and paste this in. So literally, oops, wrong copy, I think. Okay, copy, paste. And now what I can do is roughly position this where it should be. So, hit enter. I'm going to right click, merge down, say preserve. We want to preserve the mask. Hit Control S to save. And once you save that document, it knows, hey, let's re-enter ZBrush and pick this up and put this on the model. So you can do this with existing models and textures, by the way. What I should have done, just to mention this, is to actually have this be in a flat skin shade or a flat color, because you can really see the texture on it. Now, what's cool about this is that if you're painting, which you can do just by hitting B for brush, P for paint, and then A is the shortcut chain, because you'll see the little A up here in the button. You can now paint color on this. And if you hit C, basically wherever your little dot center of your brush is, if you hit C, that picks up the color, and we can now start to paint this in. So you can actually now flesh out and paint in the rest of your model, right? So we can work exceptionally fast using the best Photoshop and ZBrush. And what's great about this is that as a sort of final part to this, we'll pretend it's more polished than it is, but usually what I do, because mesh is kind of messy, I would duplicate my model. Okay, I would go, I'll show you this in solo mode just so we can see it without all the textures and stuff. Yeah, let's just turn off poly paint, because this is basically poly paint is texture directly applied to the mesh surface, so I'll turn this off. And what I'm going to do very quickly is let's have symmetry on. Symmetry? There we go, symmetry. I'm going to Z-remesh this, very low poly count, Z-remesh. Again, it is a little bit messy, just be aware of that, because there's some messy mesh there, but I'm showing you a rough condensed workflow here. Let's see, remesh in half. Groups. Okay, so let's say that's our prop. What's great about this is that we technically have two props here, right? There's kind of this one that has tiny mesh and divisions and all this stuff, and then we've got a simpler low-res mesh. So what we can do, and I'm going to just show you this by soloing this, we're not really going to see the other prop. Under subtool is something called project, and you can say project all. And it's going to say, hey, there's poly paint data on that other subtool. Do you want to copy that as well? Usually in this case, they say always yes. So you see, it captures the detail back onto a cleaner version of the model. If I hit Control D again, because there's not enough polys to support this, I'll say project all again. Control D, project all again. So usually I go up to a high enough resolution where I can get all the detail and painting and texture and sculpting back into the model. So divide one more time and project all. And that's roughly about it. So, the final step might be to go in and create some UVs, and I'll show you that quickly as well, a very condensed version. So if I go down to my lowest resolution model, I'll go down, let's say, halfway through here. Oops, I don't want to slice it, but I want to just use the select rectangle. Okay, so isolate half. Oh, I should do this without symmetry on. So isolate half, hit Control W. So Control W creates a polygroup, okay? And I might just do roughly the same here. Control Shift click to isolate, Control Shift Alt click to hide other parts. Okay, Control W. Sorry, I'll just hide this up and Control W. There we go. Let's do this. Control W. Okay, so what's great about this is I can now say Z plugin, UV master, polygroups unwrap. If I just work on a copy, you want to work on a clone to check it out, flatten it, there's the layout. Pretty good, right? So back to this version where I have the 2 copies, right? So what's nice about this now is, let's say I go to my highest division. I can now go down to, so again, I'm in solo. We've got 2 copies sitting one on top of the other, but if I go to solo, I'm just looking at the new clean base with high and low. I can basically go down and say, let's go to UV map. I want a 4K texture map. And let's say create new from polypaint. Done. I want a normal map, which has maybe some sculpting detail. I'll have to go to my lowest subdivision, which is Shift-E to go down, by the way. I'll say create normal map. And all that detail comes out now. Any sculpting detail. And that you can send to Maya for use in your films, your animation projects. Okay?